You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What's up, Los Angeles, and welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, LAFBnetwork.com, and live at the bottom of the hour on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. This is your Chargers segment. What's up, Bolt fam out there? Excited to get into it, and joining me, it's been a while. Obviously, their show is on the network, but we haven't recorded together in what feels like ages. The great Dan Wolkenstein, host of Chargers Unleashed, right here on the LA Football Network. What's up, brother? How we doing?
I am good. Hello, Ryan. It has been far too long, my friend. I miss your voice, miss your face, but happy to be here talking Chargers football. Can't wait. How have you been?
Been good, man. It's been a wild season between college and pro, and it's funny, last year our pro teams were better. Obviously, the Rams won the Super Bowl. Chargers had a really fun run there, and the emergence of Justin Herbert. And the college teams, UCLA went 8-4, but they were very up and down. USC was putrid. And this year, like swaps, you get the Rams are terrible, although a great game last night. Chargers have been so up and down, and you get UCLA a 9-win team, USC an 11-win team, the title. So it's been kind of a role reversal for our coverage this year.
Yes, LAFB has been through a roller coaster the last month or so, but we made it to the other side. And yes, that that Raiders-Rams game yesterday was wild. Happy for the Rams, but man, pour one out for Raiders season. That was bad.
Yeah, it was. I talked all about it on last segment, and it was the best Rams victory of the season by far for a number of reasons. And obviously, it's great just to see the Raiders lose. I think if anyone that's of the 31 other teams like seeing the Raiders lose. So especially Chargers fans, obviously in the division and, after just losing in the last week. So that was a good one. And we'll kind of touch on that as we do our Chargers talk a little bit, cause I want to kind of blur the lines a little bit, but as always, this Chargers segment is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag right now. Use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Tough game to bet on this weekend with the Dolphins coming to town and the Chargers yet again, maybe even more shorthanded this side on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Dan, off the top, what are just your initial thoughts of this matchup, which is heralded to be Herbert versus Tua, but obviously there's a lot of other storylines going into this, most notably the injuries on the back end for the Chargers.
Yeah, as much as this is a quarterback versus quarterback game, at least that's what it's kind of being primed to. That's why they are now flexed to prime time. This is going to be a lot about kind of the supporting cast for either quarterback and who's going to be able to kind of have the horses to get something done. We've all heard Tua with how successful he's been this year, and rightly so. He has looked like a different quarterback, has looked very good. Also has Jaylen Waddle, also has Tyreek Hill, and Mike McCarthy knows what he's doing. So they're all kind of together synergistically. But they also are now without left tackle. Mike Daniels, not McCarthy. Mike Daniel.
Mike McCarthy's doing a good job in Dallas too, so give him some credit. Okay. Give credit where credit's due.
Thank you. But they're missing their left tackle, and you just saw them get the brakes beat off of them by the Niners when they went up against a good team after the 4-game winning streak against some teams that weren't that great, i.e. the Bears, i.e. the Browns, i.e. the Steelers. Not great. This is going to be a test for the Dolphins. And you look at the Chargers, same story, broken record. They've had decimated with injuries all season. Finally, it looks like they might be getting Corey Linsley, their center, Mike Williams, a receiver back. Their offense might be able to make some strides. And then what do you know? Derwin James, Bryce Callahan, and Sebastian Joseph-Day, all three pivotal pieces to the Chargers defense, who has already not looked great, have not practiced at all this week, so it's looking pretty questionable for them. So as much as we want to talk about Tua versus Herbert, I think right now it looks like Herbert's getting some of his offense back, is losing more defense. Tua, we're not sure what's going to happen with his offensive line. We saw what happened last week. I think Herbert's going to have another Superman game, which unfortunately that's what he has to do in order for the Chargers to win games. He does not have a supporting cast, at least that's healthy, like Tua and company has. But say what you will, it's going to be a box office game. It's going to be worth the hype. I will be there in attendance, and I have the Chargers winning. I'm not even going to hide it. I have the Chargers winning this game.
All right. Well, good. We're at that point now, Dan, where it's almost must win. This team, I think, has to go 4-1 down the stretch to have a shot at the playoffs, get to 10 wins. Luckily, after this game, they get the Titans, and then they have a fairly easy end of the schedule with, Rams, Broncos, and I'm blanking on the third team there, but it's not the most formidable. Colts. There you go. Colts. So they just need to get through these two. If they can split 1-1. So that's why I don't think this is a absolute must win, but I think it starts this Sunday. If you lose this game, drop to 6-7, it's going to be very doom and gloom, which it's been most of the season among Chargers fans, but it'll be season over for sure at that point. We're going to get into the Herbert. Me and you have had, thoughts on Herbert that have gotten us, skinned alive, and they're not even like bad thoughts, but just conversations. So I want to, me and you can have a little therapy session talking about that. We'll do that here in a minute. And I'm putting you on the spot here. We didn't prep into this, but outside of Herbert having a Superman game, which we both admit, even with the conversation we're going to have later, that yes, he doesn't have the sporting guys. Like, he has to be Superman to win. Like, we're not denying that by any means. But outside of him, who is one player, offense or defense, that you're seeing that needs to really have that Superman type game to give this Chargers team the shot at a win?
Ooh, that's tough. I'll go one on offense, one on defense.
Love it.
I think the Chargers, we've talked about how much they've missed their skill players, and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams have played roughly 50 snaps all season together. They need Mike Williams back for kind of that big play that they have not been able to get. We saw last week against the Raiders. And again, look, the Raiders played that game like it was a Super Bowl. Their defense looked very good that week. And the receiving core for the Chargers just did not get open and looked really bad. And Justin Herbert really didn't have much room. Mike Williams is one of those players where he can kind of, despite it all, still find a way to catch it. And so I think they need something from Mike Williams. You're going to have to see a big game from him if the Chargers win this game, in my opinion. On defense, this is where it's kind of going to get ugly. You're going to need to have breakout or strong performances from guys who you aren't used to seeing have strong performances. I think this is going to be a big test for like a Nazir Adderley type. This is going to be a big test for a Kenneth Murray type, both of which you've seen struggle against athletic players, athletic offenses. And when you can give kind of those huge chunk plays that those two players have been accustomed to giving up, you cannot do that against a team like the Dolphins where they have such electricity that they have on offense. You want someone who's going to be able to kind of keep things in front of them. Both of those guys are not those types. I think those two, if you see those guys running behind folks, you're going to be in for a long afternoon, long evening, now that it's in prime time. So on defense, I'm going to go Nazir Adderley, Kenneth Murray. On offense, I think it's Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think those are absolutely two key ones. And obviously the hope is, I know Mike Williams is trending towards playing right, and let's hope there's no setbacks or anything like that. Because, yeah, they're going to need, I mean, this is going to be one of those games. The Chargers can't score 13 points in this game. Like, the offense cannot score 13 points if they even want a shot. They're going to need to touch 30 probably. I mean, with the way the defense is playing regardless, this is the 4th ranked offense in the Dolphins going up against the 27th ranked defense in the Chargers. Chargers are giving up an average of 27 points a game, essentially. So, like, you got to get to 30. And I know they're injured. The Chargers are. I know things haven't gone their way. But if Keenan and Mike are both there, and if Justin Herbert is who we think he is and who we know he is, you should be able to get to 30. And that is going to be, I think, the key for this. Now, if we're looking at, if I'm picking two key players outside of Justin Herbert, I'll go with, on offense, I'm going to go with Joshua Kelley. And because we know what kind of output we're going to get from Austin Ekeler. Obviously, he needs to have a better game than he had against the Raiders. He had a drop against the Raiders. It was critical. I don't know if you saw, he was on I don't know if it's his podcast, but it's with Matt Harmon on Yahoo Sports. I don't know if he does it every week or just a guest every week, but he was like so critical of himself. Just like, man, it's like when you have that bad of a game and you feel like you cost it for your team. And so, I always give my hats off to Ekeler for how honest he is and what he
had a fumble too.
Had a fumble too, and he owns it and says that. So you're going to get a better performance from Austin Ekeler. So I'm going with Joshua Kelley just because they need the Kelley from the beginning of the season. They need that other back that can step up in the moment and have some big plays. And we saw it from Kelley before he got hurt. And part of it, I think, is maybe the injuries lingering. Part of it, they really haven't given him enough opportunity to kind of get in a rhythm. I've talked on our show a bunch. I don't know if you and Jake have on your show, but running back is so much about rhythm. Like, you can't give a guy 6 carries and expect those 6 carries to all be for 6+ yards. Like, you got to get guys in a rhythm. I would love seeing, if they can get Ekeler 12 to 15 carries, get Kelley 10 to 12 carries. That puts you at the 25 mark, which I say for no matter what team, you need to have 25 plus carries in the NFL to really give yourself a shot. And that puts you right there. So I want to see Joshua Kelley have that type game. Before I go to defense, feels like you want to say something, so jump in.
Yeah, the problem is this offensive line for the Chargers has been a wreck. And look, you can use that as an excuse, but like they've been decimated. Corey Linsley, arguably one of the top 3 centers in the NFL, out for concussion. They've been without their starting left tackle. They've been out their starting right guy. Like Trey Pipkins has been hurt with a knee injury. You saw Zion Johnson go in and out. And you saw against that Raiders team, like it's non-existent. It's a turnstile. And the Chargers rushing attack has been non-existent. And that has been a huge issue to where the Chargers have us like throw like 75% of the time. And when they try to establish a rhythm, they're going the wrong way on first down. Like 2nd and 12s, you cannot sustain those. And so at some point, they're like, look, would I rather go 2nd and 12 or give Justin Herbert a chance to go 1st and 2nd down and try to get something? So I agree with you. Like the rushing game has been such a disaster. They need a huge game. And not even big plays from Joshua Kelley. Just like consistent. I'll take 4 yards. Give me 4 yards. Average.
Take 3.
Yes. Like just give me something.
I mean, here's the thing, Dan. And, you know, we can blame a number of different things, and injuries are absolutely I think the biggest crutch of this team right now. And, you know, for all the talk on Joe Lombardi, I don't think he's been great. I don't think he's been horrendous like a lot of people think, but, you know, he's definitely had his faults. And I think his biggest fault, at least in these last 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, has been abandoning the run game. And I agree with everything you're saying, that the offensive line just hasn't given these running backs the opportunity. But when you're running the ball 13 times, like the defense also knows, like we're just ears pinned back. Like there's no misdirect. There's no anything keeping you on your heels at all. And so at some point, and I say this a lot and it probably gets old, I truly believe this with all my heart, that you need to run the ball 25 plus times, regardless of efficiency. Regardless, you can run 25 times and get 30 yards, but at least you're forcing the defense to play physical. Brandon Staley has said that before. Like running the ball
tough, rugged,
forces the defense to be physical, because if you throw the ball 40 times, 20 of those plays, there may not be a tackle. Either it's an incomplete pass, the runner runs out of bounds. So you're almost giving the defense a break. When you run the football, you're forcing them. And guess what? Out of those 25 runs, I bet one of them goes for 12. Maybe 2 of them go for 12 and 13. Maybe one goes for 50 just because you've tried it 25 times. And so if we start doing that, and I know there's injuries on the offensive line, but we just saw the Rams, who have even a worse offensive line, beat this same Raiders team with a quarterback that hadn't been there for 48 hours. So at some point, I just want to see some commitment to it, because as good and all world as Justin Herbert is, no quarterback in this league, I don't care who it is, can win when you're throwing it 45 times and everyone knows that's what you're doing. And so that's been my biggest issue with Lombardi. It's not necessarily schematically, it's just decommitting from the run.
Yeah, the offense has been like multiple recipes for disaster, kind of all bundled up into a really bad recipe for how to be unsuccessful, which we'll get into. I know you mentioned the running game, you mentioned Joshua Kelley. On defense, who's your guy?
So on defense, I mean, I could do a number of different players, but I'm going to go with anyone rushing the passer not named Khalil Mack. We know Khalil Mack's going to try to show out. So, you know, we could go with, Chris Rumpf will go with anyone else, because basically Kyle Van Noy. Because here's the key, Dan, and you touched on it, especially if Derwin James ended up being out or Bryce Callahan's being out, even if they're both there, who I both love, but I really don't think you're going to stop this passing attack with the secondary. The secondary has played admirably this season, but Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, you're just not going to do it unless you can really get after the quarterback in Tua. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I don't think we know he doesn't have the strongest arm in the league. So if you can just get pressure in his face and he has to just throw it up, then you give yourself a shot. But if you're getting him back there and he has a clean pocket and he can just kind of dump it where he pleases, because he is accurate. You know, he may not be the most powerful arm, but he is accurate. So to me, it's got to be that pass rush, and it's someone not named Khalil Mack needs to step up and really get after it. And obviously we know how much they're missing Joey Bosa, but you know, this roster was built the way it was. You have 2 of the best in the league as your starters. You had some decent depth that, you know, obviously hasn't been there all season long, but I think it's time to see some of those guys step up, hopefully, and, you know, get 2 on the ground, especially if Armstead doesn't play at left tackle.
The The thing that I think there's probably two major sensitive topics for Chargers fans. One is if you say anything negative or you're anything remotely critical of Justin Herbert, which I understand because there's a lot of folks outside the tent who are just going crazy talk and clickbait with some takes on Justin. And then the other one is like, who's the bigger problem, the offense or the defense for this Chargers team? And when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, like regardless of how injured you are, regardless of the talent, regardless of blah, 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 regardless of the coaching ineptitude, like it's still Justin Herbert. And you still should be able to be putting up points, whatever. There's no excuse for the Chargers offense to have, I want to say it's 23 points a game. Yeah, 23 points a game.
That'd be generous, I think.
I think it's 22.7 points per game this Chargers offense is getting. Now, the defense isn't great, 25.8 points they've given up. But 22 points a game with Justin Herbert at the helm, like, that's criminal. And I'm not putting it on Justin Herbert, but that's what I was talking about. Like, the recipes for disasters are all kind of stacked together. Like, the offensive game plan, not great. The talent on the offensive skill positions because of injury issues, not great. Offensive line, not great. And then Justin Herbert not being able to go God mode every single time, like, it's hard to expect that, especially when he's been broken ribs for half the season. So, like, all of these things kind of compounded on each other. It's not just one thing, but the team itself is really not giving themselves much position for success on offense. And so when you're only doing 22 points a game, you're relying on this defense to do that? Like, that's tough sledding. Your offense has to be better, period.
Yeah, I mean, the correct answer is it's a team sport. They're both bad this year. I mean, so far, that's, I mean, we could argue all you want, but I agree. If we are, and this is kind of what I've talked about on our show last week and obviously got ripped apart for, and that's fine. And I think you and I would both sit here and want to be very clear. Like, we are not taking the Emmanuel Ocho stance of taking Tua over Herbert. I mean, still, Dan, if I was starting a franchise right now, outside of Pat Mahomes, I would take Herbert over Allen. I would take Herbert over Hurts. I would take him over Lamar Jackson. Like, because I see how good he can be.
Yes.
I see how good he is. My biggest point is I just don't think he's reached how good he can be yet. There's still a little bit more. And everyone immediately goes to, well, look at his receiver injuries. Look at his offensive coordinator. Look at his offense line. It's like, I get it. I agree. Like, those are all absolutely true. But at some point, we need to see, and it's hard because we're still in it. Like, those injuries are still there and whatnot. But at some point, to get to that best quarterback in the league, second best quarterback in the league, we need to see a little bit of the elevation level. And last week was the prime example, because I had been leading up to that on the other side of the coin, where it's like, can't put any blame on Herbert at all. Look at what he's dealing with. Look at that. But then the other thing, Dan, that I know you say this and I say this is, as fans, you have to also look outside of your team and look around the rest of the league and what other guys do. And not just at the good circumstances, because everyone's like, well, look at the receivers he has. Look at the coaching he has. Look at this, look at that, look at that. And you start having to kind of peel it back and say, okay, when you look at these great quarterbacks, the best way to kind of compare how great they are is when the players around them leave and go elsewhere. Like, how good do those guys do then? And we've seen offensive lines, offensive tackles, offensive guards who are great in some situations go to others, and they last two years in their contract, they get cut. Because a quarterback can make that offensive line better, can mask some deficiencies. The quarterback can mask some deficiencies in the offensive coordinator. The quarterback can make the running game better because of how scared the defense is. So there's a lot of intangibles, and I'm not saying Justin Herbert is bad at those. I just haven't quite seen that. And I hate cherry-picking stats. I hate week-to-week narratives. I've said it many times, but I'm going to do it this one time. Last night, we see Baker Mayfield get off a plane 48 hours prior, has a hell of a lot worse offense than what the Chargers had. He was throwing to Ben Skoranek and Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson. His offensive line, Ty Nesky, has been on like 40 different teams and is 45 years old. They were getting shredded by Max Crosby, and he leads 2 back-to-back touchdown drives in the final 2 possessions to win. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form saying that Baker Mayfield is better than Justin Herbert, but those are the moments that I want to see Herbert rise above and say, I don't care who my offensive line is. I don't care what the play call is. I don't care who I'm throwing to. I'm that good. I want to see that week 18 of 2021, down 15 against the Raiders in Vegas, 5 fourth down conversions. That was elite Justin Herbert. This year, I don't think we've quite seen that on a regular basis. We've seen moments, just not on a regular basis.
It's the same thing that we've seen from this team all year, and it is lack of consistency. Now, I'm going to speak for you, Ren. I am not once saying that Justin Herbert is a bad quarterback or not even a very good quarterback. Like, he's a great quarterback, period. Yeah, end of discussion. It's okay to be a great quarterback, but also not be the best quarterback without dogging, quote unquote, your guy. Is Justin Herbert amazing? Yes. But the issue, again, not even the issue, the thing that I think he needs to do to take that next leap is that God mode type presence that you see from folks like Josh Allen, like Mahomes, where...
All right, hang on. Put a pin. I want to take a quick break, and I want you to continue that thought. So we'll be right back at the top of the hour. All right, welcome back, Los Angeles. Welcome back, LA Chargers fans. Dan Wolkenstein joining me here on the LA Football Show. Talking all things Chargers, talking Chargers Dolphins, specifically talking Justin Herbert. And I apologize, Dan, for having to cut you off for that break. But take it right away. You were just talking about comparing Herbert to the likes of Allen and whatnot. But I'll toss it back to you.
Yeah, like it's okay. It's okay to say that your quarterback, who is a generational talent, who is a top 5-10 quarterback, easily, arguably top 3 to 5, you could say, it's okay to point out things that he can do better. You know, we talk about, and for good reason, how injured this Chargers offense is, whether it's the offensive line or the lack of skill positions due to either roster or injuries. The Chargers went up against the Chiefs just a few weeks ago, and the Chiefs were without like all of their playmakers. They had like 3 tight ends who like regularly don't play, and they're getting torched by them. Like the one constant was Patrick Mahomes doing incredible things and extending plays, extending the sandbox, if you will, and just making magic happen. Like you see Josh Allen do that too. And I'm not saying everything is a success. Yes, Josh Allen throws interceptions. Yes, Patrick Mahomes throws interceptions. But more often than not, you see those guys pull rabbit out of the hats and find ways to do stuff that no one else can. In play, in script, or out of script, where folks want to clown the Chargers for their offensive play calling and the coaching staff. But even with the bad play, Justin Herbert still has things he can do to extend the plays, to roll back, to roll out, to audible out, to check down. There are things he could do to where even if it's a bad play call, even if guys aren't open, there are things he could do to help. Now, I'm not putting the blame on Justin Herbert. He is nowhere near the top of the list of problems for this offense at all. And he is a tremendous, tremendous quarterback. The only thing that they are lacking from him is more consistently being that God mode. It's unfortunate that they have to rely on that, but that's just the reality. Just like what you see from the Bills and you see from the Chiefs. They hardly win when those two guys are not playing well. They hardly do. It's just period. Especially at the end of games. End of half, end of game, beginning of games, those guys are like automatic. And that's when it has to be. And Justin Herbert, for the most part, is just not as consistently. And so
look at Dan, not to cut you off, but because everyone likes to like say, I mean, because here's what it boils down to. Look at that Thanksgiving Day game, right, with the Bills. You have Josh Allen against Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. Josh Allen led the game-winning drive. If the game ended, that would have gone, check the box, game-winning drive. Well, then Kirk Cousins goes down and ties it up. They were about to tie it up. They don't convert. They get the ball back. Then what happens? Josh Allen fumbles in the end zone. The Vikings get it. They end up going to overtime, and they win in overtime. So unless your quarterback, I don't care what his name is consistently being that God mode, that elite, that number one, you're not going to win a lot of football games, at least the best teams. And then why are we even having this conversation? If your quarterback isn't playing elite every single play, then what are we conversating about?
It's okay. It's okay for your quarterback not to be the best one, which again, like if you're just being honest, like Justin Herbert is not the best quarterback in the NFL. Like that should not shock anybody. Could he be? Does he have the talent to be? Is the potential there? Is his ceiling higher? Is his floor higher? Absolutely.
Yep.
But if you just look at the baseline, he's not there yet. And that's okay. Like, he's still so young. He's still incredible. We love him. I think he's a great quarterback. Wouldn't trade him for anyone.
Yep.
I'm with you, Chargers fans. Like, I'm with you. I'm just, like, you can have the rose-colored glasses off for 2 seconds and still be a rabid supporter of this team and this player. While also, even if he got some truth serum, he would tell you where he could be better. Now, sure, like, does the injury hurt? Yes. Does the injuries to the other guys on the team hurt? Yes. Does the lack of speed hurt? Yes. Does the play calling hurt? Yes. But, like, he could also help. Like, he could also just be, like, it's unfortunate because I know the reason Chargers fans are so sensitive is because of kind of the hot take clickbait stuff you're getting externally. Yeah. So I get the sensitivity, but it's unfortunately made them overly sensitive to where they can't look at things critically and honestly. It's just immediate defense, which I understand. Like, they're protecting their guy. I get it. I get it.
But the hard thing is we're not tearing down Justin Herbert. I think that's what.
But they're thinking. They think that you are because you say anything critical, and it just. I think it's just like it's a neuron that fires that's immediately like equating it to Emmanuel Acho.
Yeah, exactly. Just not. I mean, I'm not saying I'm taking 2 over Herbert. Like, that's ludicrous. That is clickbait. Not only is that clickbait, that's just patently false. There was a. Did I see it on a? I was on 2 Dolphins show this week. I can't remember if they told me, or I saw it somewhere else. But there was 5 Dolphins former execs.
Yes.
All
in Miami,
all polled who they would take if starting a team. All Miami Dolphins guys. All of them took Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're not saying anything like that is negative. We're not even saying anything negative. And we're not putting blame. This team wouldn't be 6-6 without Justin Herbert. I mean, that's how good he is. That's how good he's
terrible. Played. Yes.
However, if Justin Herbert was, and I'm just pulling numbers, if let's say right now if we consider him the 7th best QB in football, the 6th, the 5th, if he was the 2nd or 3rd, this team might be, 8-3 instead of 6-6. Or if I can do math right, 8-4.
And that's okay. And that's okay. Like, we're not sitting here saying we expect him to be. But I'm like, what if? Like, if he was Patrick Mahomes, this team wouldn't be 6-6. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. And like, you get crucified for saying that.
Well, and the hardest thing, because it's so hard to compare across, and I know we just did that for 10 minutes. It's so hard to compare across different teams and quarterbacks because situations are so different. They have different coaches. Every play is different. And so I get that. But at some point, you have to look at every excuse being made and saying, like, okay, when are we now just like protecting and making excuses? Like, I had a conversation with someone about, that the Niners game, and how I was like, look, not faulting Herbert because the Niners have a great defense. They had a bye. They had everything in their favor. You had 50 seconds left up on your 10-yard line. So I'm not faulting them. However, that was an opportunity for a great moment. If the Mahomes was back there, if Brady, if you never had a doubt, probably like, oh, great, 55 seconds. That's plenty of time. Whereas we all were like, yeah, I don't think he has the horse. Like, we just immediately are like, oh, he doesn't have the receiver help. I don't think the offensive line.
Yeah. And first play sack, second play interception.
Yeah. And this guy immediately said, well, look at Brady had like 5 seconds to throw. Herbert's arm was hit. And that's why the interception. Like, if his arm doesn't get a hit, it's not an interception. I'm like,
sure.
But that's freaking football. Like, that's part of it. Yes, his offensive line is not great, but that is football. You have to elevate above that. That is life. No one in life can get, I mean, not no one, obviously money can change things, but let's just say the relative population cannot get to greatness without overcoming hurdles, overcoming blocks in your way, overcoming people in your life that might be holding you back, but you have to overcome that. Herbert's done it on many occasions. He just hasn't done it on every occasion.
And I will say this. I will say this. I think the frustration, and I'm hoping I can speak on behalf of Chargers fans for this one, is the overarching kind of frustration with how this team has handled Justin Herbert's first few years. Now, they've built a ton around, quote unquote, him with offensive line help that was needed. They got defensive line help. They got all kinds of help to try to get Justin Herbert to not have to be as hero as he is. Unfortunately, like, a lot of those guys are hurt. And unfortunately, like, there's a couple things they could have done better. They could have had more depth at offensive line, especially tackle. They could have had a speedier guy. But, like, again, without offensive line, who cares how speedy somebody is? You're not going to get it to him.
Yeah.
But at some point, I think people are just frustrated because all of these worst case scenarios are all happening at the same time. And it's kind of bringing back that narrative of like Chargers going to Charger. And you have to kind of look at them in isolation. And together, yeah, it's all kind of become this big cluster. But like, it's a lot of things all happening together. And for as much as people want to talk about, oh, this Chargers, GM doesn't, give them enough depth. There's enough depth on this roster. Ryan, there isn't an NFL roster in the NFL that's going to withstand upwards of 20 plus injuries, half of them to their best players. It's not like depth is only depth for so long until like the depth is gone, the depth is gone, the depth is gone. Now what do you do?
Well, I said this on the Rams segment is I think injury wise, and my camera got super dark randomly. I don't know if I'm going dark on this.
You still look beautiful
on this show or what, but I feel like the injury wise between the Rams and Chargers have been very similar this season. I think the Rams now have actually surpassed the Chargers in number of injuries, just, with Stafford being on IR gone, Allen Robinson being gone. And look where the Rams are. They were in the Super Bowl last year and they're a 4-win team. They're 4-9. And so the fact that Chargers are 6-6 shows how good Justin Herbert is, which again, we are trying to reiterate. He is great. We're just speaking at a different level, but B, that there was some decent depth built in this team. Not the greatest, but I mean, the fact that you have Jeremy Salyer in the back pocket to play left tackle when your all pro left tackle goes down, that says something about the depth. Now, has it been beautiful? No. As we just said, the defense is 27th in the league, but this is a 6-6 football team with a chance to go 7-6 that has everything still in front of them. They control their own destiny essentially to make the playoffs. And I think there's something that needs to be said for that. Now it's just a matter of execution among these players to get to that next level and get to the next step, because that to me is the easiest comparison. Look at the Rams. Look right across the locker room in your own stadium. Rams have had injuries too. And guess what? They were
3-9 until yesterday.
They were 15 seconds away from being 3-10.
Yeah,
with Sean McVay, with the all world coaches that everyone hates the Chargers coaches.
Yep.
With Sean McVay, they're about to be 3-10.
Yeah, if 4-9, does that mean he's a bad coach? Like I don't know. I don't think so. And exactly. For folks who want, last thing, I'll put a ribbon on or a bow on this injury thing and depth for the roster. Go to any NFL roster and take away their left and right starting tackles, their starting center, their top 2 receivers, and 5 of their defensive linemen. Pick any 5. I don't care. They're not going to be good. They're just not. At least at those positions, they're not going to be good. And how can you, you can't be upset with a team for bad, quote unquote, depth when 5 of their guys are gone and then the next 5 come in and they're not as good as them. Like, what? There's a reason why they were there. Like, that's.
Yeah. No,
exactly. It's a funny world, man. It's a funny world.
Well, and that I think, the last thing we can say, because I'm sure people listening are like, well, you just said Justin Herbert needs to rise above that. Like, he needs to get over those injuries. So I think that's a good way to say that we both believe, and just because I know you and obviously we've had this conversation, that, and I've said it 5 minutes ago, but I'll say it again. This team is probably 6-6 solely on the right arm of Justin Herbert.
100%.
So we're not saying that he needs to rise above all these injuries to be 8-4. We're saying just in those critical moments, that's where we want to see it. He doesn't need to throw for 500 yards every game to nobody, but in that last minute and a half, when the game's on the line, that is where then throw the injuries out the door. Because we just saw Baker Mayfield do it.
Throw into Tom Brady do it. Yep.
On the 2-yard line. Go down with no timeouts.
You see Mahomes do it with 13 seconds. You see the Bills do it with 40 seconds. The Chargers had the ball with a chance to tie it against the Raiders on that second possession.
That was the biggest one for me. Like,
the Raiders, they had it. They had it against the Chiefs. They had it against the Niners. They had opportunities in all of those spots.
Yeah.
Now they did it against the Cardinals, but that's 1 out of 4.
Exactly.
Just saying.
And I'm giving the benefit of the doubt against the Chiefs because their defense let up. Giving the benefit of the doubt against the Niners, even though I just said what I said. But the Raiders one was the one where I was like, all right, that was the moment. You have Keenan back. Obviously the missed call probably hurt them. And that's the last point, Dan, and we can wrap up with kind of a final preview here in the last 5 minutes. But you do have to, and we have to at least admit this, you do have to have some luck and things go your way. I mean, last night,
100%.
If Chargers legend Jerry Tillery doesn't get that unsportsmanlike conduct, we may not even have this conversation about Baker Mayfield. There's been tons of instances in Tom Brady's career where whether they get that penalty or the lack thereof against the Chargers, Pat Mahomes on that last drive, 2, in my opinion, flagrant
huge
penalties.
Holding. Yes.
No calls. You get the push off on the reception and you get the intentional grounding. So there absolutely also has to be some luck, which the Chargers have gotten no favors in that regard. And obviously they got one against them on the Raiders. So it's, I totally see both sides. I see the defense and why people do get offended. For me, it more stems, and you've been a fan longer than I've covered the team, but I've seen this behavior all the way back to Phillip Rivers. It's just the quarterback can do no wrong. It's ownership. It's Tom Telesco. It's coaching. It's injuries. It's this. And it's like,
it's the merchandisers. It's the folks who are selling the popcorn. Like it's the
podcasters. It's the media.
The grass. Yeah. It's not Justin.
I get it.
It's not Justin.
So, but with that said, Sunday night, you will be there. Is baby girl going with you again?
She is not. Once it got flexed to a night game, that kind of took her out of this one.
True.
So going with a buddy, he's flying in from the East Coast. So we're actually going to be going to that one right before his red eye back home.
Oh, so he's flying out just for the game.
No, he's flying out for work and then making it for pleasure as well. So we're going to go out to that afterwards.
You can just say the game. That's fine. But so, okay. So you said your 2 keys, Mike Williams and Nas. I said Joshua Kelley. And I'll go with Chris Rumph. I said a pass rusher not named Khalil Mack, but I'll go Chris Rumph. So how do you see this game going? You said right at the beginning of the show, you think the Chargers can pull this one off. I'll be honest. I struggle saying that just based on the injury report yet again. I want to have confidence. I really do. But how do you see this game really unfolding?
The thing for me is, as bad as this defense has looked, like they've kept this offense, in my eyes, in position to win. They've been in position to win. Now, like, could they have been better? Sure, of course. Both sides have been bad. But, like, defense has done enough to win these last handful of games. And I kind of see that same thing happening. Now, obviously, no Derwin James. It's like a huge astronomical shift. Yeah. But Corey Linsley is slated to come back, who I think is probably, other than Keenan Allen, which actually now I might think Corey Linsley is more important, is the most important thing for Justin Herbert's success. He owns the entire front line and the interior of that offensive line, which you saw just get railroaded this past week. If he can stay in, not only will it help Justin Herbert from a pass protection, but also it will help, i.e. Joshua Kelley, Austin Ekeler from like a run game and just from schematic perspective. So I think Mike Williams, for that shot play, for like the consistency, for that gotta have it type stuff, along with Keenan Allen, those 2 guys together, I think, are huge. And Corey Linsley, I think, is big. And I think that offense with those 2 additions back, we'll see what happens at right tackle. No idea if Trey Pipkins is going to be playing. But those 2 guys, I think, is going to bring a steady-ish presence to this offense that I think is sorely missed. And so that, in my eyes, I think is going to be enough to where the Chargers are going to have some miracle at the end of this game. But I think they're going to get it. They're going to have an end-of-game situation where they're going to have, call it, a minute and a half, 2 timeouts, down 5. They'll have the opportunity. And with those guys, can they march down the field? Again, with those guys, can they march down the field? You've got Corey Linsley. You've got Justin Herbert. You've got Austin Ekeler. You've got Mike Williams. You've got Keenan Allen. You've got Gerald Everett. Mm-hmm. That's enough. You saw what Baker Mayfield did. Like, that's enough. They would die for that roster. That's enough. If they get to that point, can they do it? Or will this coaching staff screw it up? Or will they get screwed up by another tip pass? Or will they fold? Or will they prevail? I mean, they cannot go 6-7 and still want to go to the playoffs. They can't. I think both of us agree 10-7 makes it, but you can't expect them to go 4-0. You just can't. Any team, it's hard to do.
Yep. Yeah. I agree.
And also, you know how jacked up this entire team is to fight for Justin Herbert right now? If there's one game in the entire season that has been circled to like, all right, we got to step up for our guy. Like, this is it. I know everybody talks about Kansas City. I know everybody talks about how much they hate the Raiders. Like, no. Miami, at home, prime time, the whole Tua thing. Like, you ride with your guy. And you've seen some of the flack that Justin Herbert's gotten this year. unrightly so, laughably so at times. This team is going to be all in for their guy. Coaching staff, players, the guy who's selling the hot dogs, everyone is going to be here trying to support and get Justin that W.
Yeah. I kind of want to see Dan, and I don't think this is really Justin's style, just being his personality, seeing, a biology major, like just, he seems a very like cerebral, like outline. Like he's a guy that if he did podcasts, he'd have like 5 pages of notes going into it. He's not freeballing it like us.
He'd be way more prepared than we are.
Way more prepared. Obviously a preparation guy, but I'd love to see like, let his hair down a little. I mean, he's got such a beautiful mane. Let the hair down and just go play ball. Like, I think that's what made that Baker game last night so special, is how much of the playbook could he really have known? At some point, it was like, all right, here's like a package of 10 plays, but just go make something happen. Go have fun out there. And
I want to see that Giants game from last year where you saw him just go out and just have fun and let it rip. And then he had the best throw I've ever seen. We were there live for it. 70 yards down to Guyton. And you saw him just go ballistic. He was so happy. The entire team was happy. He went crazy, let loose a little bit. Like, that's what you want to see. Like, exactly. You're 6-6. This is the time. Like, your season is on the line now.
Yeah.
Let it ride.
Exactly. Like that week 18 against the Raiders, those final 2 drives. It was basically like, throw the playbook out. Justin, go make a play. That's what we want to see. Like, That's the quarterback that is elite, and that ability is there. And he has to do that this game to get a win. Now, I was on a few Dolphins podcasts earlier. I actually picked against the Chargers just because at the time I just did not feel confident. But based on this conversation, I'm flipping. And I think we see the best offensive performance of the season this year. The Dolphins are very mid-tier in terms of defensive where they rank. I think they give about 24 points per game. So right on cue there, right on point there. But I think we see a great game from Herbert. I think we see the backs get things going. And I think we'll see this offense finally show some fireworks, Dan. And I think I agree, though. It's going to be back and forth for sure, because the offense on the other side has all the fireworks too. I think we'll see an end of the game heroics. Like every Chargers primetime game, it's always a 1-possession game. And this one, I think the Chargers do get it done at the end. I'll go 33-30 as your final. All right. We got to take another break. That's Dan Wolkenstein, host of Chargers Unleashed, right here on the LA Football Show. This was fun, man. Thanks so much for coming on with me. Appreciate you as always.
Of course, this is fun. Chargers fans, get ready, relax, take a breath, but get into it. This is going to be a fun matchup. Ryan, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.